Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I, like many Sonic fans, are eagerly awaiting the very soon release of Sonic X Shadow's Generations. While I've been waiting, I've had a look back on Sonic Generations, in particular the levels that were included in that game. As many of you will know, Sega held a poll to ask fans what levels they wanted included from Sonic's past. The levels found within the game are the direct result of that poll. However, I had a thought. If they were to remake Sonic Generations, or make a sequel to Sonic Generations, what levels would they include then? And that's exactly what I'm going to be doing in today's video. I'm going to be going through Sonic's past and picking new levels for a Sonic Generations 2. There's a few quick rules I just want to go over before we get into things. Much like Sonic Generations, I'm only going to be picking one level per mainline Sonic game, and all of the levels within Sonic Generations cannot be repeated. Otherwise, well, what's the point? When looking back at the levels of Sonic Generations, although I believe the overall selection is fantastic, it does stand out like a sore thumb that 4 of the 9 levels have a city theme. So when I was picking my levels, I really wanted to build a great sense of variety. And finally, of course, as always, this is just my subjective opinion. You are completely welcome to agree or disagree, and in fact, I actually encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below. What levels would you have selected? And one last thing, much like Sonic Generations, I'm not going to be talking about any of the handheld games. Although Sonic Generations on DS does cover this, I highly doubt that if Sonic Generations 2 ever was to be made, that the handheld selection would ever be represented again. I'm also not going to be talking about any spin-offs like Sonic Boom. Thirdly, I'm not going to be talking about Sonic Frontiers either, as it technically doesn't have any zones to choose from. Although they could make a zone out of the open world, I really couldn't imagine Sega going through the effort to do this, and instead, they're likely just going to skip over it. If I was making Sonic Generations 2, I also would completely skip over Sonic Lost World. However, I am going to be talking about that game later on. With all that finally out of the way, let's get into it, starting off with Sonic the Hedgehog 1. Oh boy, am I starting off with a controversial one. Looking back at Sonic the Hedgehog 1, it was extremely difficult to pick a level for this one. Green Hill is the obvious go-to, but of course, we are not allowed to choose that. So, I was very torn between Marble Zone and Labyrinth Zone, the two worst zones in this game, and let me explain why. When looking back at Sonic 1, I really wanted the chosen level to be given the chance to redeem itself. Much like how Sonic Mania sort of makes zones like, say, Lava Reef into incredible experiences. I really wanted that for some of the levels of Sonic the Hedgehog 1, which arguably has one of the weaker selection of levels. I chose Labyrinth Zone because I think it has a more interesting visual aesthetic, and I think having at least one water zone is a good idea. I think a lot of people will disagree with me on that one. Definitely a very controversial choice, but my selection for Sonic the Hedgehog 1 is Labyrinth Zone. I don't really understand why Sonic Generations doesn't have a level from Sonic CD. It more or less completely skips over it, with the only exception being the Metal Sonic boss fight. So, while Stardust Speedway is technically in Sonic Generations, it's not one of the levels, so I do think I'm allowed to get away with this one. Although Stardust Speedway is the obvious choice here, I just really love this level, especially the aesthetic of its present. Regarding the time-traveling mechanism of Sonic CD, I think Sonic Generations 2 could do something really clever here, and have you travel to the past, present, and future of Stardust Speedway during the zone itself. Have it not be an optional feature, but just have it be one of the set pieces that occurs during the level. I think this would have been really fun. I don't really understand why Sonic Generations just completely skipped over CD. Sonic Generations really teased us by including a pinball machine based on this zone, and not actually including the zone itself. While I do understand Chemical Plant being a better choice, when it comes to selecting my option, I think a casino zone is definitely appropriate for at least one of the levels, given how many are in the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. When it came to picking one, I think aesthetically, Casino Night Zone is just my favorite. It looks really good, and seeing it modernized will be just gorgeous. Having a snow zone is also something that Sonic Generations just completely skipped out on. I definitely think Ice Cap Zone is kind of the go-to here. The opening little snowboard section would be fantastic modernized. I know Sonic Adventure 1 dabbles in this a bit and does it very, very well, but seeing it a bit more modernized would be really, really fun. And if we could get a remix of the original Michael Jackson version of the song, which I know is very, very impossible, that would have been fantastic as well. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 was one of the hardest to choose a level for because it just has so many great options, but Ice Cap Zone has always been a personal favorite of mine. While Sonic Mania came out in 2017, I think it's the most appropriate to put its level straight after Sonic 3 and Knuckles. And wow, for a game with only 4 original zones, it was incredibly hard to pick one here. Press Garden is very, very close to being my actual choice for this, especially with how utterly gorgeous Act 2 is. And Mirage Saloon is just such a fun level and has a great desert aesthetic that I think would really help with the variety. I gotta go with Studiopolis. I am a sucker for this zone. I love the sunset neon lit look of this city. So yeah, this was incredibly hard to choose, and I could definitely understand if people would have preferred Press Garden or Mirage Saloon. Sonic Adventure 1 was a very difficult one to choose from. It really does have a fantastic selection of levels, but my official choice is going to go to Red Mountain. I absolutely love the aesthetic here of the mountainside with a lava-y underground subsection. I think there's a lot you could do here, especially with like set pieces. And there is just so much going on at this zone that I really do think a modernized version of this could be absolute chaos if done correctly. I would love to see this one. Much like Stardust Speedway, Final Rush is technically in Sonic Generations. It's the Shadow boss fight. And again, it's not technically a level, and I really didn't want to go for this one because it's kind of the very obvious choice after City Escape. But I really do think the space aesthetic and the high-speed rush of this level just holds great potential and visually would look absolutely gorgeous. So, Sonic Adventure 2 was surprisingly hard to choose for, but my official choice is Final Rush. Sonic Heroes has some surprisingly good options to choose from, but my choice is going to be Mystic Mansion. Not because I think this level is really, really good, but because I think it's actually hugely missing out on its full potential. A haunted mansion full of strange visuals and puzzles holds fantastic potential that I just don't think this level captures, and instead the level gets way too bogged down with combat sections. Having a more high-speed rush kind of version of this would be insane and an absolute trippy experience. I would love to see this modernized and done correctly. The most infamous of Sonic games, Sonic 06 actually has some really good options to choose from. And again, I know I'm going for the obvious choice here, but Kingdom Valley really is just that good of a level. Say what you will about the game, I think Sonic's levels in this game are actually pretty good. And Kingdom Valley is no exception, and it has some great game mechanics that I would love to see modernized. My favorite Sonic game, Sonic Unleashed. This was incredibly hard to pick a level for, simply because I just think this game has so many amazing options thanks to its traveling around the world gimmick. I personally don't understand why Rooftop Run is always the go-to when it comes to picking a level from this game. I personally think there are much better options. Now don't get me wrong, I think Rooftop Run is absolutely incredible, but my official choice would go to Dragon Road. I absolutely love this level aesthetically and mechanically. I think it has a lot going on, and I just think running along the Great Wall of China is just such a cool thing for Sonic to do. I would absolutely love to see this level redone and recoded with a nice fresh coat of paint. Sonic Colors, in my opinion, has the strongest sense of variety when it comes to level aesthetic. I really do think you can make a case for any of the levels being the official choice here. But the one I'm going to pick is Starlight Carnival, and I know I'm doing this because I'm being a bit of a graphics whore, but considering how good this level looks even on the SD version of the game on the Wii, It blows my mind that we have not seen this level remade in a modern game with modern graphics. I know we got it in Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed. That game definitely held back graphics-wise, and I still think this level deserves to be done properly with modern graphics. I know I'm choosing this one just for really bad reasons, but this level is just so damn gorgeous that I just need to see it done with modern graphics. Now, if I had to pick a zone from Sonic Lost World, it would probably just be Windy Hill Zone. And that kind of sucks because it's just another Green Hill-esque zone. I do think the floating islands aesthetic does help it stand out at least, but as I said at the start, if I had complete creative freedom, I would completely skip over this game. Whether you like the game or not, I think you kind of have to admit that aesthetically, it is just ripping off the Mario formula to a T. Like, very generic selection of level aesthetics, you know, grass, desert, snow, tropical. And it's not that Sonic doesn't explore these kind of environments. In fact, I've already included some of those on this very list. My problem with it is that they are the most generic versions of that kind of aesthetic, which just doesn't make me want to choose them for this game. But if I absolutely had to choose, it would have to be Windy Hill. Sonic Forces was also very difficult to choose, but for all the wrong reasons. I hate pretty much all of the levels in this game. I don't think any of them are good. Aesthetically, mechanically, whatever. The only one that somewhat stands out for good reasons is Metropolis. I genuinely think, as a city level, this one has some nice things going on, and the background elements of the ongoing battle are great. I really do like them. It's a very weird look for a city, but look, there's really no other options here. Sonic Forces just has terrible, terrible levels and a horrible aesthetic. I know I'm being harsh here, but Sonic Forces is just, without a doubt, probably my least favorite Sonic game. There's nothing to love here. And finally, our latest Sonic game. Sonic Superstars actually has some really, really good levels. However, the most unique of which is, of course, Cyber Station, which is such a fun level. I love the pixelated look it goes for, and I love that even Sonic gets turned into a pixelized version of himself. Say what you will about this game, I know it's gotten mixed reviews, but I was smiling like a little giddy kid the entire time I was playing this level. I absolutely adored this one. So much fun and so visually interesting. And with that, that's my collection of levels that I would love to see in a Sonic Generations hypothetical sequel. Now, plenty of room for discussion here, so as always, I would love to know what you think. Do you agree with my choices? Do you disagree with my choices? What would you have chosen? Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, have a bloody good one. Take care.